The Mongol Empire was the largest contiguous land empire in human history. But what if the horde that shook the world had also ignited an industrial revolution, centuries before anyone else? In our timeline, their conquests were fueled by horse and bow. They were unmatched in speed, but ultimately limited by the brutal logistics of spanning an entire continent. Without the infrastructure to bind it together or resolve the bitter feuds of succession, the empire eventually fractured under its own massive weight. But in this alternate timeline, a world of pure speculation, not history, we imagine a different path. What if they had unlocked the secrets of steam and steel to overcome those limits? The consequences would ripple across every continent, reshaping war, trade, and the very idea of civilization itself. Our journey begins in the early 14th century. The vast Mongol domains, the Yuan dynasty in China, the Ilkhanate in Persia, and the Golden Horde in the West represented the pinnacle of global power, yet they were already feeling the tremors of internal division. In the bustling imperial workshops of Khanbalik, modern-day Beijing, under the rule of Emperor Ayurbarwada, a breakthrough occurred. Artisans were heavily funded to improve blast furnaces. During these intense trials, one engineer realized that compressed steam from a crude boiler could do more than just heat. It could powerfully drive a heavy iron piston. To most, it was a loud and dangerous curiosity, but to the emperor's strategists, it was a revelation. This machine offered a mechanized answer to the empire's oldest and deadliest enemy, distance. The vision of an inexhaustible steam-powered logistics network was born, and with it, the order was given to build it in secret, at any cost. Ayurbarwada, known for his keen intellect, immediately grasped the implications. He established a clandestine imperial institute, Tiangong Yuan, or the Forge of Heaven's Craft, dedicating vast resources to developing this fire piston technology, shielding its secrets from both internal dissenters and foreign spies. The first breakthroughs were modest but revolutionary. Steam-powered bellows dramatically increased furnace temperatures, producing higher quality steel in greater quantities than ever before. This new steel meant better weapons, stronger tools, and more efficient agricultural implements. Within a decade, and well into the reign of his successors, this technology was applied to mining. Steam pumps drained flooded mines, unlocking vast coal and iron reserves previously unreachable. The output of essential resources skyrocketed, creating a virtuous cycle of production and innovation. The most immediate and visible impact was on transportation. Early steam-powered land caravans, cumbersome but powerful, began to traverse the well-established Mongol road network, moving goods and military units with unprecedented speed and volume. The ancient Yam relay network, the empire's legendary horse-powered communication system, now had a mechanical successor. News of these monstrous fire carriages and the immense metal production began to filter out through merchant tales, dismissed by most as fantastical exaggerations. But this was only the beginning. The consolidation of this industrial might within the Yuan dynasty did not go unnoticed by the other Mongol successor states. Emperor Ayurbarwada's successor, recognizing the ultimate power of this technology, saw an opportunity to reunite the fractured empire not by cavalry alone, but under a new banner of technological supremacy. He dispatched envoys. Initially, the Ilkhanate and the Golden Horde were wary, but the promise of endless resources and superior weaponry proved too tempting. Trade agreements solidified into technological transfers, with Yuan engineers establishing factories in Persia and the Pontic steppe. The pace of military innovation accelerated dramatically. Simple hand cannons evolved into matchlock muskets and, rapidly, into primitive breech-loading firearms, and mass production meant equipping entire armies. Siege engines were replaced by mobile, steam-powered artillery platforms that could breach stone walls with ease. The first true test came against the Mamluk Sultanate in the Levant, the same power that had once, in reality, handed the Mongols their greatest defeat at Ain Jalut in 1260. This time, the outcome was shockingly different. Mamluk heavy cavalry, renowned for centuries, proved utterly outmatched by disciplined Mongol infantry, wielding advanced firearms and supported by steam-powered war machines. The world beyond the Mongol Empire began to stir with a newfound dread. Rumors of these iron demons and fire-spitting warriors spread like wildfire, painting a terrifying picture of an empire reborn, stronger and more relentless than ever before. The Industrial Revolution had dawned, not in Europe's quiet valleys, but in the fiery heart of the Mongol steppe. The Mamluk defeat sent shockwaves across Europe and the Middle East. Soldiers began to call their ruler the Iron Khan, a title that would echo in terror from the Levant to the Rhine. Now unified and unstoppable, this industrial juggernaut turned its gaze westward. Their target, the struggling European kingdoms, fractured and unprepared for this new form of warfare. In the wake of 1335, as the Ilkhanate collapsed following the death of Abu Sa'id, its last great Khan, the Yuan successor seized the moment. Rather than watching the Persian territories fracture, he dispatched his industrial army westward, absorbing the remnants under the Iron Khan's banner. The grand campaign into Eastern Europe had begun. This was no mere raiding party. It was a full-scale invasion designed for total conquest. The first encounters were disastrous for the defenders. Polish and Hungarian knights, accustomed to facing fellow feudal armies, were mown down by volleys of industrial firearms. Their fortifications, built to withstand trebuchets, crumbled under the relentless bombardment of steam cannons. Siege warfare, a long and arduous affair in the medieval world, was utterly transformed. With steam-powered excavators and endless supplies of gunpowder, Mongol engineers could dig tunnels and breach walls in days, not months. Entire cities fell in weeks. The technological gap was simply too vast. European crossbows and longbows were no match for industrial rifles. Plate armor offered little protection against high-velocity projectiles, and war horses panicked at the sight and sound of rumbling iron behemoths. As the Mongol tide swept through Central Europe, desperate calls for a unified crusade went out. However, centuries of bitter rivalry between the Pope and the Emperor had left Europe's defenses in permanent disarray. Just as in 1241, when the Emperor had been excommunicated rather than leading a defense, the kingdoms once again struggled to unite against the common threat. The Mongol Empire's industrial capacity also allowed for unprecedented logistical support. Mobile field hospitals, supplied by steam wagons, reduced casualties. Factories churned out ammunition and spare parts close to the front lines, ensuring an unbroken supply chain. Pause. The Battle of Vienna in 1341 was meant to be the last stand, a desperate coalition of Holy Roman Empire, Polish, and Hungarian forces. For 2 grueling weeks the defenders held, but the incessant barrage of Mongol artillery and the sheer, relentless pressure of their industrial army proved insurmountable. The city fell. The Fall of Vienna marked the collapse of meaningful European resistance. The Iron Khan's empire now stretched from the Pacific to the gates of Western Europe, from the frozen taiga to the sun-scorched Levant. The world was utterly transformed. The Mongol Empire, once a force of nomadic horsemen, had cemented its place as the unparalleled industrial and military hegemon of the known world. The future was now theirs to shape. The industrialized Mongol Empire ushered in a new Pax Mongolica, one enforced not just by fear, but by an overwhelming technological advantage. The initial devastation gave way to a rapid and enforced modernization of conquered territories. Infrastructure projects on an unprecedented scale connected the vast empire. Steam-powered railways, canals, and improved roads facilitated the rapid movement of goods, people, and ideas. Trade flourished, but strictly under the Iron Khan's control. The Mongol language, and its associated writing system, became the lingua franca of commerce and governance across Eurasia. A linguistic divide mirrored the social one, as local European languages slowly faded from the halls of power. Imperial schools disseminated knowledge and ideology. Imperial printing presses, building on centuries of Chinese printing tradition, now industrialized under Mongol patronage, churned out texts in the Mongol script at an astonishing rate. Science and engineering, once nascent, exploded under imperial patronage. Driven by the need for continuous improvement in military and industrial applications, Mongol scholars made breakthroughs in metallurgy, chemistry, and early forms of electrical theory. Agricultural practices were revolutionized. Steam-powered plows and massive irrigation systems increased yields exponentially, allowing the empire to feed its colossal population and growing industrial workforce. Famines, once common, became rare. But this wasn't a utopian world. The Mongol Empire's rule, while bringing stability and technological advancement, was brutally repressive. Conquered peoples were forced into grueling labor for colossal industrial projects. and descent was met with overwhelming mechanized force. The traditional Mongol nomadic culture, while still revered in imperial propaganda, slowly gave way to an urbanized, industrialized society. The horse, once the symbol of their absolute power, was gradually replaced by the thrumming, soulless engine. The implications for global culture were immense. Without an independent European Renaissance or Enlightenment, the world's intellectual and philosophical currents flowed almost exclusively from the East. Mongol art, philosophy, and scientific thought became the absolute standard. With Eurasia firmly under control, the Iron Khan's gaze turned outward to worlds yet untouched by their steel. Mongol long-range steamships, far superior to anything the conquered West had conceived, began charting new global trade routes across the oceans. The Americas and Africa would never face European colonization. Instead, their indigenous civilizations encountered the mechanized armadas of the East centuries earlier. The global map was entirely rewritten by industrial trade and tribute, not by European sails. The Great Divergence happened centuries early, and in the opposite direction. Instead of a world shaped by European colonial expansion and Western ideologies, a unified, technologically supreme Eurasian continent dictated the future of humanity. History's engine of modernity was ignited. The Industrial Revolution had dawned, and its ultimate triumph was secured not in Europe's quiet valleys, but in the fiery, relentless heart of the Mongol steppe. Every empire has a story history forgot. This has been Historic's Vault. More are coming. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one.